In 28 years on television, Judge Judy has heard every excuse imaginable. She's heard lies, manipulation, sob stories crafted purely to escape responsibility. She has a reputation for being unshakable, sharp, no-nonsense, immovable. In nearly 3 decades on the bench, she has never once left her seat in the middle of a case. Until this one. Welcome to Iconic Moments, a series where we revisit the single most unforgettable cases in courtroom television history, the ones that didn't just make headlines, but actually changed something. Today's case involved an 80-year-old widow, a $2,541 unpaid rent dispute, and a confession so devastating that it stopped one of television's toughest judges cold. Before we get into what happened in that courtroom, hit that subscribe button because this series is going to take you through the moments that made Judge Judy who she is, the cases she still remembers decades later. Now, sit back, relax, and let's begin. On the surface, this looked like a routine small claims case. David Morrison, a 62-year-old landlord in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, was suing his tenant of 43 years for 3 months of unpaid rent. Nothing unusual. Judge Judy has presided over thousands of cases exactly like it. Except David Morrison wasn't just any landlord. He and his tenant's late husband, Robert, had served together in Vietnam in 1968. They'd survived combat together, come home together, and remained brothers in everything but blood for over 50 years. Margaret Sullivan and Robert had lived in David's building for 43 years, paying rent on time every single month, until 3 months ago, when the payments simply stopped. Margaret walked into the courtroom that day in a carefully pressed floral dress, leaning on a wooden cane, her eyes red from crying. She looked less like a defendant and more like a woman who had already lost everything worth fighting for. "Mrs. Sullivan," Judge Judy said, her tone gentler than her usual courtroom cadence, "Mr. Morrison says you haven't paid rent in 3 months and won't explain why. What's your response?" Margaret opened her mouth. No words came out. She tried again. Only a small, broken sob escaped. The courtroom sat in uncomfortable silence as this 80-year-old woman struggled simply to speak. Judge Judy waited. She didn't press. She didn't interrupt. Courtroom veterans would later say that patience alone was unusual for her, but it was nothing compared to what came next. "My husband died," Margaret finally whispered. The room shifted. David Morrison's face showed genuine shock. He hadn't known the timeline. Judge Judy leaned forward. "I'm very sorry for your loss. When did he pass?" 8 weeks ago. "Mrs. Sullivan, your husband passed 8 weeks ago, but you stopped paying rent 3 months ago. That means you stopped paying before he died. Help me understand what happened." What Margaret said next unfolded slowly, every sentence heavier than the last. Robert had been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer 18 months ago. Doctors gave him 6 months, maybe 9, but there was an experimental treatment, not FDA approved for his stage, not covered by Medicare, denied by insurance, that might buy him more time. It cost $8,400 every single month. How do you tell your husband of 58 years that he's not worth the money? Margaret asked the courtroom. "So I paid for it, every month. I watched our savings disappear. $127,000 in retirement savings, gone in 8 months. Then 5 credit cards maxed out, $31,000 in debt, just to keep the treatment going. And 3 months ago, with $847 in her checking account and both the rent and the treatment due on the same day, Margaret made the choice that brought her to this courtroom. I chose Robert," she said, her voice steady despite the tears. "I chose holding his hand for 7 more days, over having a roof over my head, and I did it again the next month, and the month after that." Robert died 8 weeks ago, in the bed they'd shared for 58 years, with Margaret holding his hand. He'd lived 7 months longer than doctors predicted, 7 months that cost the couple everything they'd built in a lifetime together. This is the moment where Judge Judy's 28-year track record changed, because what happened next had never happened before and hasn't happened since. Subscribe now if stories like this move you, because the next 30 seconds are the exact reason this case became one of the most shared courtroom moments in television history. Judge Judy sat completely still. For the first time in nearly 3 decades on air, she removed her glasses and said nothing. Her eyes were visibly glistening. The silence stretched long enough that the bailiff didn't know what protocol to follow. Then, without a word, Judge Judy stood up from the bench. She stepped down, walked directly to Margaret, and placed her hand on the elderly woman's shoulder. "Mrs. Sullivan," she said quietly, "look at me. In 28 years, I have heard every excuse for not paying a debt. What you just told me isn't an excuse. It's a tragedy, and it's happening in thousands of homes across this country every single day." She turned to David Morrison and asked him one question. If Robert had been the one to go into debt saving Margaret's life instead, what would David have done? David didn't hesitate. "I would have told him to forget the rent. He's my brother. He doesn't owe me anything." Then he turned to Margaret and tore up the lawsuit papers right there in the courtroom. But Judge Judy wasn't finished. She pulled out her phone in front of the entire gallery and made a call arranging for patient advocacy support on the spot. Then she made an announcement that no one in that courtroom or watching at home expected. The show would personally cover Margaret's $31,000 medical debt and 6 months of her rent, giving her the time to grieve without the fear of losing her home. The gallery erupted in applause. It remains to this day the only time in 28 years that Judge Judy has left her bench during a live case. 6 months later, Margaret Sullivan is still living in the same rent-controlled apartment, surrounded by 58 years of memories. Her debt is cleared. She now volunteers at a hospice center, holding the hands of dying patients, giving to strangers what she once gave to Robert. This case has been viewed over 30 million times, not because of drama or spectacle, but because for one moment, the toughest judge on television showed the entire country what it looks like when the system finally listens. That's episode 1 of Iconic Moments. If this story stayed with you, subscribe, because every episode in this series covers a case that changed something for the people in that courtroom and sometimes for all of us watching.